You may proceed. Jefferson County Court, Law number 2 is now in session. The court is in session and calls number 23 CCCR 2380. Case and style of State of Texas versus Broderick Dwayne Mathis. Let the record reflect that Mr. Mathis is present in court with his attorney Lindsey Scott. Let the record also reflect that the state is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Andrew Hubel, and Attorney Haley Simmons. State, are you ready?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time, Mr. Masters, would you please stand as the state read the complaint? You may go forward.
In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, the undersigned defendant, do solemnly swear that I have good reason to believe and do believe that Broderick Dwayne Mathis, hereinafter called the defendant, on or about March 30th, 2023, and before the making and filing of this complaint, in the territorial limits of the city of Port Arthur, Jefferson County, Texas, did then and there knowingly.
Oh, hold on a minute. Let's take a break. All over. Jefferson County Court at Law number 2 is back in session. The court is in session and calls number 23 CCCR 2380, case style of the state of Texas versus Broderick Dwayne Mathis. We have Mr. Mathis in court with his attorney Lindsey Scott. We also have present the state assistant district attorneys, Attorney Haley Simmons and Attorney Andrew Hubel. Let the record reflect that the jury is now seated and present in the courtroom. At this time, Ms. Simmons, would you please read the complaint?
Yes, Your Honor. In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, the undersigned defiant, do solemnly swear that I have good reason to believe and do believe that Broderick Dwayne Mathis, hereinafter called the defendant, on or about March 30th, 2023, and before the making and filing of this complaint, in the territorial limits of the city of Port Arthur, Jefferson County, Texas, did then and there knowingly, intentionally, or negligently operate in the 8900 block of Sassine Avenue, a vehicle exceeding 10,000 pounds gross weight, on a street other than a designated truck route, disregarding a posted no truck sign, without an agreement with the city of Port Arthur, in violation of section 106-8 Port Arthur Code of Ordinances, against the peace and dignity of the state and contrary to said ordinance signed by the defiant.
Okay. Mr. Mathis, how do you plead?
Thank you.
Okay, you may be seated. State, would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good afternoon. Very interesting start this afternoon. Okay, first off, I'd like to go ahead and thank you all for being here today. I understand it's a holiday week, so I promise we do intend on getting through this pretty quickly, okay? So this case before us today, it's really simple. It's cut and dry, and as we just spoke about and as we did in court hour yesterday, on or about March 30th, 2023 in Port Arthur, Texas, in the Jefferson County. The defendant, Mr. Mathis, was driving down Sassy Avenue in a heavy truck that weighed more than 10,000 pounds in a no truck route. So with that being said, the defendant had no road use agreement. He had no permit, nor had he posted a bond with the city as required by the ordinance we discussed yesterday. So as discussed, once again, the state has the burden to prove all elements beyond reasonable doubt. So I'm going to kind of tackle those here with you right now, okay? So first and foremost, you're going to hear from the Chief of Police and Chief of Police, Mr. Timothy Duraso himself, okay? And he will testify that in Jefferson County, Texas, the defendant on March 30th had knowledge that he was not to be driving on this road. Matter of fact, he was given a prior warning before he had even received the citation. You will also hear from responding officers, Officer Broussard and Officer Levine with the Port Arthur Police Department. And they will also testify that the defendant, Mr. Mathis, was in fact driving or operating a heavy truck on Sassy Avenue without such posted permit, no bond, no road use agreement whatsoever.
Hold on a
State-
minute.
Yes, Roland?
Mr. Holtmeyer. Yes, you may proceed.
Now, the state's witnesses will also be able to testify to the fact that Sassy Avenue was not even a designated truck route. As a matter of fact, there's even a sign that posts no truck route whatsoever. Instead, what you're going to find is that Mr. Mathis was caught once before even receiving the citation, driving down that road, warned by the chief of police himself, but continued to operate his heavyweight vehicle exceeding 10,000 pounds back and forth on that road. So lastly, you're going to hear from Ms. Flozell Roberts. Ms. Roberts is actually the Director of Public Works. She's going to come in here and testify on the state's behalf. There was no permit. There was never a bond posted. There was never any road use agreement as provided by the city ordinance and as required. So at the end of this trial, you'll know that beyond a reasonable doubt, the state has proved all elements. And I hope that you find the defendant is guilty in this case. Thank you.
Ms. Scott, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. You're gonna hear testimony that Mr. Mathis was driving a commercial vehicle that was hauling drilling mud. He was driving it to Kurt Thomas's, that's a landowner's name, property. And you'll hear evidence and testimony that Kurt Thomas has 400 acres of industrial land right off at 365 on West Port Arthur Road in Port Arthur. And he's got a permit for, different than what they're talking about here, for what was called land farming. Okay, it's the disposal of drilling mud. And you'll hear a little bit of testimony and evidence about that. And that's what Mr. Mathis was doing that day. He was working for Bryant Oilfield, and he was delivering drilling mud to be disposed of at Kurt Thomas's property at his land farm operation, where he has a permit from the Railroad Commission to do that kind of thing. That's the business that he runs. Sassy Avenue is a no truck route. You'll hear testimony about, you'll hear it probably over and over and over again. You'll be sick of hearing it. 106-8 for other city ordinance that requires a bond and an agreement with the city to be able to take a commercial vehicle down a road that's not a designated truck route. But you're also going to hear evidence and testimony about another Port Arthur city ordinance that we believe provides an exception to this. Okay, when certain circumstances are present. And I would suggest to you that they are present here. And that when those circumstances are present, that the commercial vehicle can use any road under those circumstances. That it's an exception to this 106-8. So it's not really as simple as all that. I just ask that you keep an open mind, that you listen to all the testimony and all the evidence before drawing any conclusions. And at the end, I think that you'll see that Mr. Mathis is not guilty of this. Thanks.
Okay. State, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can call your first witness.
The state calls Chief of Police, Chief Timothy Duraso. Your Honor, may I take a brief recess just to step outside and call my witness?
Okay. Go to brief recess. Everyone, please stand. Please stand as the jury comes in. Everyone may be seated. Let the record reflect that the court is back in session in cause number 23-CCCR 2380, case of South State of Texas versus Roderick Dwayne Mathis. Let the record reflect that Mr. Mathis is present in the courtroom. His attorney Elizabeth Scott State is present with Assistant District Attorneys, Attorney Haley Simmons, and Attorney Andrew Hoover. Let the record also reflect that the jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. State, are you ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
That's right.
Ms. Simmons, you can call your next witness.
State would like to call Officer Brian Broussard.
Brian Broussard.
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer Broussard.
Yes, sir.
Please raise your right hand. Officer Broussard, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Mr. Broussard, you may take the witness stand. Turn the podium. Okay. Ms. Simmons, you may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
Right. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Brian Broussard.
Okay, Mr. Broussard, how are you currently employed?
I'm a police officer in the city of Port Arthur.
Can you tell me how long you've been with the city of Port Arthur?
Almost 35 years.
Can you describe some of your duties as an officer?
Currently I'm a patrol officer, so I respond to calls for service. I also am a field training officer, so I train the new officers that we have.
Directing your attention to March 30th of 2023, did you happen to assist on a traffic stop regarding a heavy truck on Sassy Avenue?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Do you see the individual who was stopped in the courtroom today?
She's sitting right over
Could you go ahead and identify him by a record of clothing?
there. He's in the all white colored shirt.
Your Honor, if we could let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant in the courtroom.
So reflect.
So at this time, Mr. Broussard, were you acting as an FTO or a
Yes.
field training officer?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay. Who were you trading on this particular?
Brandon Levine.
Okay. Can you tell me why you stopped the vehicle the defendant was driving?
We received a call for service of a heavy vehicle driving off of a truck route. We've received numerous calls probably for a month prior to that stuff.
Okay. Can you tell me what kind of vehicle the defendant was driving?
Tractor trailer with a dump style, trailer carrying mud.
Do y'all have any presumed weight when someone is driving a tractor trailer as officers?
Are you asking if we,
Is there a presumed weight of how much the tractor trailer may weigh?
oh, we know it weighs over 10,000 pounds. The tractors, typically they're rated for 80,000 pound gross vehicle weight rating. They may range differently empty, but 80,000 pounds for gross weight.
So y'all are able to infer at the traffic stop the actual weight of the truck, is that correct?
Yes,
Had the department received several calls, and I believe you testified, had they received several calls prior to you coming onto this traffic stop that day?
yes, ma'am.
Of those calls, were you actually a responding officer?
Several times. Usually we just missed the truck coming in or out.
To your knowledge, did the defendant, Mr. Mathis, did he have a permit to use Sassine Road that day?
It did.
So on a scale, could you tell me about how many times you had been out to Sassine Avenue?
30 or more.
Was it always regarding the heavy truck use?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say you're familiar with Sassine Avenue, given that? Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, ma'am.
Handing the witness what has been marked state exhibit number 1. Can you tell me, do you recognize the location of this?
That is the intersection of Sassine and FM 365, if you're looking north.
Okay, can you describe, well, actually, we'll get to that in a moment. Is this a photograph, a fair and accurate depiction of that road?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and tender this to defense for inspection.
States, no objection, states exhibit number 1 will be admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish?
You may publish.
I'm gonna give this to you. Can you explain that to the jury, what it is you see?
This road here is basically horizontal. That is Highway 365. If you're familiar with 365 and West Port Arthur Road where the railroad tracks are, that is just east of it. And Sassine is the little road right here. It runs off basically the north direction and it dead ends. So it's, I think technically it's 2 blocks long. It also runs south all the way back to some tank farms on a road called Dorsey, crosses railroad tracks at West Parker Road. But right here is 365, just west of West Parker Road.
I'm gonna go ahead and pass this along to the jurors, Your Honor,
You
so I
may.
can have a closer look. Okay. So you said you'd responded there roughly 30 times prior to this. Have you ever written a ticket or citation for driving off truck route?
I have not, I think one of my other, probationary police officers issued one other citation.
Regardless of you not having issued a citation prior to this today, would you say that the road was heavily enforced?
Oh, it was heavily enforced. We just missed the trucks most of the time.
Okay. So on this particular day, were you called out there?
On this particular call, yes, we received a call from a resident that the trucks were back active.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Ms. Scott?
Good afternoon, Bruce Howard. So on the 30 or more times that y'all have been called out there, you missed the trucks every time except for this time?
Not every time, but probably 80 to 90% of the time, yes. We would receive the call and it would take us 2 or 3 minutes to get there. That road's 2 blocks long. So by the time we got there, we missed it.
Because these trucks are going into a property to unload what they're
Yes.
carrying before they turn around and leave. So I mean, it takes them more than 2 or 3 minutes.
Well, most of the time we're getting in on the calls when they're coming out.
This is the only ticket you'd ever written.
I didn't actually write this one either.
Okay, well, this is the only ticket you'd ever been a part of.
No, we actually had another citation we wrote that one of our sergeants was sitting out there watching trucks and he called us for a ticket writer because he didn't have his ticket writer with him.
So 2 tickets.
That's the only tickets I can think of that I was a part of is 2. Usually I gave verbal warnings.
Okay, so you usually did not write a ticket for this.
I don't write,
Even
I
though-
don't write many tickets, period. I just
Even though you've been out there 30 or more times, you did not ticket the two people that you could
We
think of.
probably stopped maybe 4 or 5 trucks out of 30 times of getting calls. It's calls for service, but the trucks weren't there when we get there.
And those weren't on Mr. Mathis.
No,
And are you familiar with how many houses there are on Pasadena Avenue?
pretty much.
Would you agree with me, there's three houses there?
There's 3 on one side of the road, and there's one on the other that technically has a different address, but.
Well, but on actual Pasadena,
Yeah,
there's
there's
three
only
homes, correct?
roads, only on the west side.
Are you familiar with the residents that live there?
Mhm.
Are you familiar with the businesses they run? So one of them,
Only the last house on the far north that had a dump truck business.
okay, Mr. Artola runs a
Yes.
dump truck business, correct?
Yes.
And are you familiar, have y'all ever gotten calls about his dump trucks, meet people and park there at his house, right?
Years ago we did, and I haven't made a call there in probably 2 or 3 years, no.
And did y'all ever go out to ticket those commercial vehicles, those dump trucks going to and from his home on Pasadena Avenue?
I haven't actually made calls about him driving. I know that he's been called on the city, but the city's inspections have gone and talked to
Okay,
him.
to your knowledge, have any of his trucks ever been ticketed? And those are over 10,000 pound vehicles,
Yes.
correct? So would you agree that if he's gonna drive those dump trucks to and from his home there on Pasadena, he would need, I mean, they're calling it a permit, but really it's an agreement with the city?
He would.
Okay, and are you familiar, with Mr. McZeal that runs a construction company that also lives on Pasadena? That has like a construction business?
He may have an address, but he does, his house is, somewhere else, but it's not his.
Okay, so one of the properties there on Pasadena is actually, that's not a primary
No.
residence, he doesn't live there, he keeps his horses there.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
His son lives next door. That's the
Um,
house that's on Nathan and the Gould structure.
And to your knowledge, have they also, in conjunction with their construction company, brought, commercial vehicles up and down Pasadena Avenue?
I have not seen them do that.
Okay, and you don't know of them ever being ticketed for that or anything?
No.
Are you aware of them having any agreements with the city to use Pasadena for that?
No, I'm not aware. The only business I know he has is a concrete business on the side. He works for DB7 is his primary, job.
But the only trucks y'all have ever written tickets to are the ones going to and from Kirk Holmes' property.
Yes.
Are you familiar with one of the 6-8, that's part of the state ordinance they're referencing here, the ticket was written under?
They just, it's a vehicle over 10,000, it's 10,001 pounds. So very vague.
I hand you what's been marked as defense exhibit 1, you'll have a look at that. And then, does that appear to be a copy of that ordinance, if you'll look at it based on your knowledge of the ordinance?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer to evidence defense exhibit 1, which is a copy of the ordinance 106-8, and ask the court to take judicial notice of it.
State,
No objection.
okay.
That way you-
Defense exhibit number 1 will be admitted.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Broussard, that ordinance is entitled use of certain designated roadways by construction companies?
Yes.
To your knowledge, is Kirk Thomas running a construction company?
To my knowledge, no.
And are these, were you aware of what the truck was hauling, the drilling mud?
What I was told is they were dumping drilling mud on his property from another site.
I don't know how familiar you are with that process, but are you aware that Mr. Thomas has to have a permit from the Railroad Commission to do, they call it land farming, the disposal of drilling mud, you can't just dump it anywhere? Are you?
I'm familiar that permits are required, but we were told he had no permits from anyone.
Okay, well, I'm not talking about for the road, I'm talking about
Right.
dump the mud.
Okay.
That wouldn't be something you would police, though.
No, it's not something we deal with at all.
Right, the Railroad Commission handled all that. Well, in looking at this ordinance, have you ever read this before in its entirety?
No, ma'am, not in its entirety.
If you look at the first line where it says, no person shall operate construction equipment and vehicles in excess of the legal load limits, I mean, doesn't it appear to be referring to construction equipment?
It states construction equipment.
If you go down, because it is, I mean, it's pretty lengthy, but if you go down about halfway through where it says contractors desiring to operate construction equipment and heavy trucks exceeding 10,000 pounds, it does appear to be talking about contractors operating in, again, construction equipment, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then, about the bottom 3 lines, it says, those trucks must first make an application with the Director of Public Works, specifying the particular areas of construction and the time necessary to complete that work, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So is it your belief that Mr. Mathis was supposed to have like petitioned the city or made an application with the city to carry some type of permit under this ordinance to drive the truck down to Kurt Holmes' property?
We were actually instructed of that information by the chief, and we were told many times to come out and enforce it by stopping and citing the drivers when necessary.
Were y'all ever told not to enforce it?
No.
The other time y'all were told to stand down?
No.
And
Not
then-
during this particular time. I mean, recently he had another contract and that was all permitted.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Objection sustained.
Are you all familiar with the application process of the city of Port Arthur to obtain this agreement? Okay.
That's the,
And chief was out there that day, to your knowledge, was he out there that day
yes,
before y'all got there?
prior to us being there.
Did y'all talk to him?
I did.
So he was still there when you got there?
I can't remember if he either came back, because I've talked to him many times out there. So I can't tell you if he came back that day the second time, or if I talked to him while he was out there.
And Mr. Mathis and he did not write a ticket for Mr. Mathis, did he?
No.
But he was there when Mr. Mathis came down the road and entered the property.
From what I understand, he talked to Mr. Mathis at the site.
Okay, and is it,
Off the road.
Southern Avenue dead ends into Kirk Holmes' property, right? I mean, if you drive straight, you're just gonna run right through this gate
Just property.
into his property. Are there other no truck routes that are not through streets that you're aware of that dead end into their destination?
Actually, there are. There's, well, that's in town.
But is it fair to say that once he went in, I mean, he's gotta come back out?
Mhm.
I mean, that was gonna happen, right?
Yes.
And so y'all were there waiting when you.
No, we were told the chief followed him out. We stopped him was a second.
The same day?
No, the chief told me he followed him out. He gave him a warning and he followed him out.
The officers that were with you that day, you were in training.
Officer Levine was.
Were you working, commercial vehicle enforcement at that time? Have you ever worked commercial vehicle
No.
enforcement? It's been marked as Defense Exhibit 2. You'll have to look at that. So this Port Arthur City Ordinance 106-41. Are you familiar with that at all?
Vaguely.
Have you ever been, like, heard reference to it or been made aware of it? Maybe in connection with these tickets? It's not that.
In relations to this tickets, yes, a little bit,
Okay.
but no, I'm not very familiar with this.
Your Honor, offering to evidence Defense Exhibit 2 and ask the court to take judicial notice of Port Arthur City Ordinance 106-41. Oh, you can hold on to it.
Okay.
State.
You have a copy to take in review.
Yeah.
They have no objections, Your Honor.
No objection. State defense exhibit number 2 is admitted.
Would you have a look, officer, down at, under B, number 13? Well, first of all, would you agree with me this is entitled Powers and Duties of the Department of Public Works?
Yes,
So this,
doesn't really apply to us, it applies to public.
and do you see down under number 13, well, under section B, it basically says that the city can, I mean, the city can designate the traffic, I mean, which streets can and can't be used for commercial vehicles, right?
Yes.
Okay, and under section B, it says the Department of Public Works is authorized, after consulting with the police department, that's you guys,
Mhm.
And then you go down to number 13, in conjunction with the chief of police. The director of the Department of Public Works can designate the routes along the streets of the city which must be followed by commercial vehicles, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you see, like that third line down where it says, no such vehicles shall be prohibited from using any street for the purpose of going directly to or from any residential, commercial, or industrial establishment abutting on such street for purposes of routine commerce, provided they enter the street at the closest intersection to their destination, proceed no farther than the next intersection in order to return to their point of entry.
Yes, ma'am.
But no one had ever showed you this before, or told you there was any kind of.
Actually, this section, we had a legal opinion from our, city attorney who's no longer with us. She retired. And she said that her legal opinion was this applies to people like FedEx and UPS.
And for
And
what?
it doesn't apply. I don't know. That was her legal opinion.
Okay, but
And-
would you agree with me? It says in the first line, designate the routes along the streets of the city which must be followed by commercial vehicles engaged in the steady hauling of material of any kind or which are carrying unusually long or heavy loads.
Yes, ma'am.
So big commercial trucks, right, carrying material and unusually long, unusually heavy trucks.
Yes.
I've had witness.
Ms. Simmons?
Just to confirm, I don't think I asked this originally. You're a certified peace officer, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So regardless of property access to get to a location, is this still a violation of the city ordinance, the drive-off truck route?
It is.
Okay. Is there any reason why an officer would give a citation when they're not written so frequently?
I'm not understanding your question.
So you had testified with defense that there was not many citations written for this actual.
It is our discretion to write a citation or give a warning, and the few trucks that we did catch out there, we did give verbal warnings sometimes, and I can't testify to other officers, but some people have received citations and some have received verbal warnings. And in Officer Levine's phase of training, it was his discretion, it wasn't mine as to how it was handled.
So this street, Sassy Avenue, would you say it's residential in nature?
It is
Okay, is there any commercial property?
just Mr. Thomas is at the dead end of it.
Okay. And you said you stopped vehicles coming out mostly. On this particular occasion, you had happened to meet with the defendant, Mr. Mathis, actually exiting the property.
Yes.
You said the chief of police was following him out.
He followed him out, from my understanding, the first time. He was not with us the time that we saw.
So you would say that this had happened multiple times that same day.
Yes.
So he would have had to pass the no truck route as identified on State's Exhibit 1
Yeah.
each time. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's
Okay. So whenever y'all did stop Mr. Mathis, was there any issue as to whether he was the one operating the vehicle?
No, he was sitting in the driver's seat.
And was Mr. Mathis operating in conjunction with a company?
Yes.
So was he hauling equipment that you know of?
He was hauling drum mud.
So you were aware that Chief Duraso had actually given verbal warning to him
Yes.
prior?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you made aware from Chief Duraso how many times he had been on that street?
No, he just told me he had stopped him, talked to him. He went there to talk to Mr. Thomas, if I remember correctly, and that's when he saw Mr. Mathis and talked to Mr. Mathis.
Okay, and you have Defense Exhibit 2 in front of you, is that correct? Okay. Just for the jury, could you read out number 13 for me?
It says, in conjunction with the chief of police, designate the routes along the streets of the city which may be followed by commercial vehicles engaged in the steady hauling of material of any kind or which are carrying unusually long or heavy loads. More?
You can continue on.
Oh, okay. No such vehicle shall be prohibited from using any street for the purpose of going directly to or from a residence, commercial or industrial establishment abutting on such street for the purposes of routine commerce, provided they enter such street at the closest intersection to the destination and proceed no further than the next intersection in order to return to their point of entry.
And in order to get to where he was hauling equipment, did he have a separate point of entry?
Only the main entrance off of Westport Arthur Road to Mr. Thomas's residence and property.
So there was an alternative route?
Yes.
No questions?
No further questions.
Okay. May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Scott, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Officer, you may step down.
Thank you.
You have a blessed day. State, you may call your next witness.
State would like to call at this time Chief of Police Timothy Durso. He should be in the room, sir.
Chief DeRussa, come forward. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you may put your hand on. You can take the witness stand. Simmons, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon.
Hello,
Could you go ahead and state your name for the record, please?
Timothy Durso, and I'm having voice challenges today.
Okay, that's fine. I'll try to work with you, okay?
Do you need any water or anything?
Oh, no, sir. Thank you. I'm not sure what's going
Okay.
How are you currently employed, Chief Durso?
on. With the city of Port Arthur as the police chief.
How long have you been with Port Arthur?
Going over 4 years, in the capacity as chief of police.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, ma'am.
So what, so be repetitive, I apologize. What is your job title with the police department?
Daily operations of the police department.
What are some of your,
Council and citizens and other duties.
can you list those duties for me?
The other duties?
Yes.
Traffic, community events, things of that nature.
Do you occasionally assist patrol officers out on the street?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And on March 30th, 2003, did you happen to be assisting patrol on Saffron Avenue in Port Arthur, Texas?
No, ma'am, I wasn't assisting patrol. I was going to check out the area where we received numerous complaints about 18-wheelers. And I was going to talk to the property owner, see if we could come up with a solution for that issue.
And Sassine Avenue, is that Jefferson County?
Yes, ma'am.
So who hauled you out there on that day?
No one. I went myself to go look and see if I could come up with a solution for the problem that we've had. And then talking to the property owner that's adjacent to Sassine Avenue.
Okay, so you went out there just to try to find some type of resolution.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you happen to pass by the defendant, Mr. Mathis, that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you speak with him in terms of him driving his heavy truck on the road?
Yes, ma'am. I talked to him while he was on the property.
Do you see him in the courtroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you identify him by an article of clothing?
Yes, ma'am. It's the black male with the white t-shirt.
Let the record reflect Mr. Durso has identified the witness.
The record will so reflect.
Did you give a verbal warning to Mr. Mathis?
Yes, ma'am, I did. After talking to him and realizing that he's trying to make a living, I decided to give him a verbal warning at that point.
At how many times did you see him on that road while you were out there?
I don't recall seeing him that day.
It was just that one time you had met with him? Did you instruct him that he was not to be driving on that road?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. At any point, did you happen to follow him out?
Yes, I did. I followed him off the property.
And that was after you said you gave him a break?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was that to ensure that he would leave the property
Yes, ma'am.
and not return.
Right.
Was he informed of that?
Yes, he was.
Are you familiar with Port Arthur City Ordinance 1068?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell me what that ordinance is?
It basically says that, that 18-wheeler should not have been on that property. Or should not have gone on down Sassy to get to that property.
Who is it that designates those streets upon which commercial vehicles are prohibited from driving?
It's, myself and the public works director.
So you actually have the authority to designate which streets are commercial or non-commercial in nature?
Yes, ma'am, according to the ordinance.
And according to you, was Sassine Avenue a truck, or was it, what a no truck route?
That is correct. And we had a sign display also indicated that.
Is Sassine residential in nature?
Yes, ma'am.
So it's primarily homes?
Yes.
Are there any businesses on that street?
No, ma'am, not to my knowledge.
And regarding Sassine Avenue, is it one that would require a permit or a road use agreement that would be required within the ordinance?
That is correct.
Were you aware at that time whether or not Mr. Mathis had posted a bond with the city as required?
I was not aware of that, but I do know that, no one was supposed to be on that road, 18-wheeler.
Which you had informed Mr. Mathis himself of?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you aware that he had no permit?
Yes,
Given
ma'am.
that information. Were your officers put on notice of that fact?
Yes, ma'am, on many occasions.
Did you actually inform your officers with the Port Arthur Police Department to heavily enforce this ordinance?
We mean heavily enforced. I wanted them to monitor it and take action if necessary.
No questions on that?
Ms. Scott?
Good afternoon, Chief.
Hello, Ms. Scott.
Who is the proper party to apply for a bond that wants to bring commercial vehicles down the road?
It should be the company that owns the, truck.
So the trucking company. I mean, you don't actually think that Mr. Mathis should pay for a bond, like $150,000 bond to, be able to work as a truck driver and drive the truck down the road?
But that's not my call to make that determination.
Well, according to the ordinance, it's you and the Director of Public Works, together in conjunction with the police and the chief of police, that can decide who gets these permits and who uses the road, and it requires a bond, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you're saying it's a trucking company that should be required to bond the road?
I think that whoever's gonna use that should have knowledge of whether they can use that road or not. I'm not getting into who should get the trucking company to drive on there.
Well, and there's a copy right in front of you of ordinance 106-8, and that's what we're talking about here today. Would you agree with me that it's entitled use of certain designated roadways by construction companies?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The title of the section, use of certain designated roadways by construction companies. That's the way it's titled in the Port Arthur Code of City Ordinances, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you agree with me that that appears to be referencing construction companies?
I'm reading it. Yes, ma'am.
And so it says, no person shall operate construction equipment and vehicles in excess of legal load limits on streets other than those designated for commercial vehicles, except in connection with the following agreement. And the very first thing is that the applicant has to furnish at his expense a corporate surety performance bond. And so that means put up a bond in case there's damage to the road, there's a bond to fix it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but, so is it your testimony today that it's the trucking company that should have to put up a bond, not the truck driver himself?
No, ma'am, my testimony is that he was given a warning not to go down the road. He should not have been there until it was clear about somebody.
He was working for, I don't know, to your knowledge, do you remember, I believe he was working for Bryant Oilfield at the time, the trucking company.
That sounds correct.
So would it be Bryant Oilfield, or the pipeline sending the mud, or Kirk Thomas, who's disposing of it, the property owner, or the actual truck driver? would be the one to bond, to apply for and need a bond? Or you're saying you don't know, or you?
No, I really haven't thought that much into it. All I know is that he was given a warning not to drive down that road, and he did, so I have to be a warning by the chief of police.
Okay, and so a bond is the first part of it. And then. And the second part is making the application with the director of public works and coming to an agreement with the city, to be able to use the road. So who is it that should do that part? Mr. Mathis, whoever he works for, Kirk Thomas, where the mud is being delivered to.
Could you read that again?
The second part of this ordinance, the first part requires a bond to be put up. The second part of it requires that you make an application, paperwork, I'm sure, with the city and come to an agreement. They don't call it a permit, but they call it an agreement with the city to use the road. Who would be the proper party to do that?
It was my understanding that, after speaking with the legal department, Mr. Kirk Thomas.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Objection sustained.
Sorry, you're just not allowed to testify to anything anybody has told you. In your own personal knowledge, do you know who the proper party would be, or you're not sure?
Oh, I'm not sure.
But would you agree with me, it'd be a little bit difficult to get a permit to use the road if we don't know who the proper person to apply for it is? And section B of this ordinance says that whoever violates it is gonna be the one punished. If he's not the party that should be applying for and obtaining the permit, is he really the one that should be punished for it, and ticketed for it? Should it be the trucking company or Mr. Thomas, who owns the property where the mud is being delivered to?
I think you're talking about two separate violations.
Well, would you at least agree with me that this ticket was written under ordinance 1068? That's what makes it a violation. Otherwise, there's no
Yes,
violation.
ma'am.
Okay. Are you familiar with Port Arthur City Ordinance 106-41? You're familiar with that, aren't you? Would provide somewhat of an exception to having to have a permit to use the road.
Okay, which section, which one?
I'm under section B, down at the bottom, number 13. Have you seen this before?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you were familiar with that. Have you ever given a copy of that to Mr. Thomas, the property owner?
I have not personally, no, ma'am.
But you have looked at it and been made aware of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe that this provides an exception when certain circumstances are present to having to have a permit to use the road?
With a permit, I think so.
You think it, in some situations, provides an exception?
With a permit.
Well, an exception to having to have a permit. Because that says in this situation, under these conditions, you can't prevent a commercial vehicle from using any street when those things are present. Would you agree with me about that?
No, ma'am, I can't fully agree with that.
Okay. While Sassine is a residential street, would you agree that it is surrounded by commercial property and industrial property?
Yes, ma'am, definitely.
It is the only little residential street right there in the area. The other properties to the right, to the left is that all that area is zoned commercial, or have you ever looked at the zoning map for it?
Yes, ma'am. There's another street that's residential. I think it's Louisiana.
Okay, maybe Louisiana or Weaver,
And
but
Weaver also.
there's other businesses over there, all 365,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
I'm driving out toward West Port Arthur Road.
Yes, ma'am.
And so a lot of that property is, zoned for commercial use, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
And Kirk Thomas's property specifically, where the drilling mud was being hauled to, is zoned for heavy industrial use, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you agree that to be able to use his property for any type of heavy industrial use, he would need to be able to get a commercial vehicle on and off property?
There's two locations for him to go onto the property, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's your belief that he should use the other engine?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
I'll strike that. Have you ever received complaints about the neighbors bringing commercial vehicles down Sassine Avenue?
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Have any of the neighbors ever been ticketed, or their drivers or commercial vehicles?
I would have to research that.
They haven't been ticketed that you're aware of today, right?
No, ma'am, not that I'm aware.
I pass the witness.
Mr. Simmons?
Mr. Dorsey, when you spoke with the defendant, was he acting as an employee of a construction company that you know of? Was he an employer? Was he acting as an independent?
It appears that, I think he spoke with someone on the phone who said was his boss.
Okay. So if his boss, Mr. Kirk Thomas, had applied for the permit, would it apply to his employees as well?
Repeat that?
If his boss, Mr. Kirk Thomas, had applied for the permit through the city as required, would that permit also apply to his employees?
Yes, ma'am.
So if he had the permit on his person at that time, he would have been able to show it.
Yes, ma'am.
And given the fact that he had no permit from his boss, who would have had to apply, he was still in violation of the ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay, so you do agree that a bond is required?
Yes, ma'am.
Also, a road use agreement is required,
Yes, ma'am.
none of which had occurred at this point.
No, ma'am.
And there was alternative routes for the defendant to actually exit and enter.
There was one other alternative route. Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, please, witness.
Okay.
Well,
Ms.
Mr.
Scott?
Mr. Mason does actually work for Kirk Thomas, to your knowledge, right? He's not an employee of Kirk Thomas.
No, he said I'm not sure who he worked for. I know he called his boss on the phone.
Okay.
He said, this is my boss I'm speaking to.
You've been out to Kirk Thomas's place. I mean, you were out there that day, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're aware that he doesn't work on the property or any kind of employee account. He was just the truck driver delivering that day.
I'm not sure who called as his boss. But he was in an 18-wheeler and he said, I'm gonna call my boss and then, I'm not sure if it was Mr. Thomas or whoever it was. He didn't tell me.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Simmons?
Just one quick question. Regardless of who Mr. Mathis' boss was, had they applied for a permit and properly obtained one, would it apply to their employee?
I mean, they didn't have a permit.
But had they applied and were granted one, would it apply to any employee?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
Okay, Chief Durso, you may be excused. You have a blessed day. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're gonna take a short recess. Would you please stand and follow the bailiff into the hallway? Will be a recess. You may be seated. Jefferson County Court at Law number 2 is back in session. The court is back in session in clause number 23 CCCR 2380, State of Texas versus Roderick Dwayne Mathis. Let the record reflect that Mr. Mathis is present in court with his attorney. Attorney Lindsey Scott, State is present with attorney, Assistant District Attorneys Andrew Hubel and Attorney Haley Simmons. State, are you ready?
State's ready, Your Honor.
And defense, are you ready?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
And let the record reflect that the jury is now present and seated in the courtroom. Ms. Simmons, you may call your next witness.
State calls Officer Brandon B, and for purposes of the record, it is spelled Ladi.
Officer Levine, would you please step forward? Officer Levine, would you please raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Please swear and affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
You may put your hand down, take a witness stand. Simmons, you may proceed.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Could you please go ahead and state your name for the record?
Brandon Levine,
And how are you currently employed?
by the Port Arthur Police Department.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, ma'am, in the state of Texas.
Can you tell me how long you've been with the Port Arthur Police Department?
I've been with them since July 1st. I've been a sworn in officer since January 2023.
Thank you. And can you identify some of your job duties?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
My job duties include routine patrol, target areas, and traffic enforcement, and trying to obtain paperwork for solving crimes, et cetera.
So directing your attention to March 30th, 2023, did you happen to conduct a truck stop for a heavy truck on Sassine Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And was that in Port Arthur, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that in Jefferson County, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see the individual you had stopped in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go ahead and identify him by an article of clothing?
Yes.
Go ahead.
He's wearing a white t-shirt.
Okay. Let the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Record will still reflect.
And at the time of the stop, was Mr. Mathis actually operating the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And were you in training at the time of this traffic stop?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been in training at that time?
I couldn't give you the second one, but we're distributing the phases, and I was in my third phase of training, I believe.
Was your field training officer with you on that date?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you conducting patrol on Sassine Avenue? Was that the reason for the stop?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you were called out there or you were conducting patrol?
I believe I was conducting patrol.
Can you tell me why you had stopped the vehicle that the defendant, Mr. Mathis, was driving?
For driving on a truck route.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, you may.
I'm handing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit number 2. And can you tell me what that is?
It's my body worn camera footage.
Have you had a chance to review it before testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
And is your body worn camera capable of making an accurate recording?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you a competent operator of said body worn camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Does it fairly and accurately depict the stop on Sassine Avenue that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And outside any alterations made for the purpose of admission in court today, is this fairly and accurately depicting the stop?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to tender to defense for inspection.
No objection.
No objection. State's Exhibit 2 is admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
May publish.
Are you able to see this clearly, Officer Levine?
Yes, ma'am, I have one behind you.
There is one behind you as well, if you're having trouble seeing right here. Officer Levine, you made a comment right here. Were you able to hear everything?
No, ma'am, what column are you referring to?
Why? No. I made a comment that this was the same truck as earlier. Did you hear that? Do you want me to play that?
Yeah, if you could play it back. I don't believe that's my voice.
Is no longer muted.
Officer Levine, is this the defendant, Mr. Mathis, you had previously identified?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And at this point, what had you stopped him for?
Driving off the truck route.
Had you responded to numerous calls on Chelsea Avenue prior to this?
Yes, ma'am.
You got your license and registration on it? Yeah. Okay, we need that. No, no, no. The party right here. We're gonna be in front of our camera. No, not, you're not in control, it's not. Okay, that's what you fail to understand. You're not, hey, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. Listen to me, you're not listening, okay? That's not what you are. We're gonna go for the mic. You're not in control, it's not. So what? You're not, you're detained on the ground. You got pulled over. Step out of the car. Step out. Yes, I'm asking you to, Pennsylvania versus Nick, step out of the car. Step off. Shut it down. Shut it off. I'm trying to find out. Because you're lawfully detained for.
Can you confirm why officers would want to pull the defendant or Mr. Mathis in this case out of the vehicle?
Yes, ma'am. On truck stops pertaining to 18-wheelers, it's an officer safety concern because of the height of the individual. It's hard for us to see exactly what they're doing, what their hands are. And it's also very loud. That's why we asked them to shut it off. It makes us feel more comfortable and safe as officers to have them step out so that we can speak to them on level ground pertaining to any violation or anything like that.
So this is routine?
Yes, ma'am, it would be routine.
This commercial vehicle officer left out. When you read that, I've been talking to another officer, just after talking to y'all, another officer on the phone. No, he didn't, he just told me to come through it, that was who it was, I talked to the head man, he just told me that. And they told me to come through it. Are you gonna step out of the car? What are you doing? You step out of the car. I'm being honest with you. I mean, there's a lot of things you gotta understand. Yeah, it's my job. I don't care about that. I don't know anything about it. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, same thing I told him, same thing I told him. I don't know. No, I don't. There's more out here. for track down the road that, deem that for, drive off truck, drive off truck, that's what they. So, no, yeah, but I thought, that was, we talked inside of there, and when I passed, when they got the, him and the other guy, who owned it, and he was supposed to have turned on, they won, so that's, I wasn't, everything was okay, because he told me, well, go ahead, it's okay, but we, the long, what a tournament that we were, oh, that was, I'm sorry, right back here, because I'm hoping to be in the same, but I'll. 737, 296, 0866. I'm going to get the vehicle, I think I'll just let me say, S79 with us. Just want to get a picture of you, you can put it right back on that wall.
Pause right there for a brief moment. Officer, at what moment did you decide to write a ticket? Issue a citation against Mr. Mathis?
The stop,
And why was that?
to make unbiased decisions based on traffic stops, need to try to decide my citation on the initial viewing of the violation.
Were there any reasons that caused you to issue a citation here?
Just the violation.
Okay. Have you ever written tickets for driving off route before?
At this time, I believe not.
But you had made stops on Sassine Avenue prior regarding this citation for this particular violation of ordinance?
I don't recall at this time.
But you had been responding to Sassine Avenue in the past.
Yes, ma'am.
Was it regarding this issue in particular?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
So at that point, would you say the street is heavily enforced?
Yes, ma'am.
And at any particular point in time, did you confirm the weight of the vehicle?
Not believe so. I believe I spoke with the passenger regarding gross vehicle weight rating.
Is there a presumed weight officers are made aware of when stopping heavy trucks?
The gross vehicle weight rating is usually around 80,000 pounds, but I think the minimum is around 10,000. I'm not 100% sure.
Just to make sure I heard that correctly, did you say 80,000 pounds?
Yeah, that's correct.
Is there a particular process you would follow when confirming the weight of the vehicle?
Yes, usually they have a book inside that pertains, that has a bunch of their USDOT information as well as the gross vehicle weight, and I think they'll recall it apart at this time.
And throughout the course of your investigation on this particular stop, did you do that?
Yes, I believe so.
Let me start with the video. At this point in time, are you confirming the weight of the vehicle?
I'm attempting to do so, yes, ma'am.
And this is routine throughout the course of your investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it interstate or interstate? Is it interstate, interstate only?
Will be. At any point in time, were you made aware of whether the defendant was actually hauling any equipment on his truck?
I don't know.
No further questions for this witness.
Yeah. Ms. Scott?
Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
At the time the ticket was written, you've been a police officer for roughly 3 months, is that right? Is that, you said January of 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And this happened in March, so a couple of months you've been working, and you were still in training at the time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever worked in commercial vehicle enforcement?
No, ma'am.
Not before that and not since then?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Simmons asked you if Sassine was heavily enforced, let's say in the street, is heavily enforced as a no truck route. And if y'all are going out there multiple times and never writing tickets until now, it's not really being heavily enforced, is it?
Depends on your definition of enforcement.
We all weren't ticketing people before this, were you? You said you've been out there before. Did you ever written a ticket out there before?
No, ma'am, I don't believe I've been able to catch any vehicles on the truck route before.
You know, when the trucks go into the property, are you aware of what they're hauling, drilling mud?
Not 100%, ma'am.
Okay, well, would you agree with me? It'd take a little time for them to unload before they leave.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with Port Arthur City Ordinance 106-8,
Not by the numbers, ma'am.
or 106-41?
Again, not by the numbers, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the ordinance requiring a bond and an agreement with the city, or do you just know that there's a sign that says that's a no truck route?
Oh, which question do you want me to answer?
Well, both. I mean, are you writing a ticket because there's a sign that says there's a no truck route and what?
Yeah.
What do you think that he's required to have that he doesn't?
Yeah, no truck route, that's why.
And you don't know of any exceptions to that? Just see a commercial vehicle on a no truck route where it's not supposed to be, correct?
At the time, yes.
I pass witness.
Ms. Simmons?
Briefly, Your Honor. Is it officer discretion when writing a citation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can enforcement of a ordinance violation simply imply verbal warnings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then did the defendant have knowledge prior to this citation that he was not supposed to be there?
I'm unsure.
Did the chief ever give him a warning and call you?
He did not call me.
Were you made aware that the chief had responded to this defendant?
Yes, ma'am. At least to the property. I knew that he responded to the property.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may step down. And you have a blessed day. Ms. Simmons, would you like to call your next witness?
Your Honor, we just got off the phone with our next witness, and it is our last one. She is on the way. She should be here momentarily.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, we're gonna take a break. Please stand. Follow the bailiff out of the courtroom.
What we do is cruise.
You may be seated. Jefferson County Court, Law number 2 is back in session. The court is in session and calls number 23 CCCR 2380. Case is filed in the state of Texas versus Roderick Dwayne Mathis. Let the record reflect that Mr. Mathis is present in court with his attorney, Attorney Vincent Scott, State is present, Assistant District Attorney, Attorney Kim Simmons, and Attorney Andrew Hoover. Let the record also reflect that the jury is now present in seated courtroom. State, are you ready?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready?
Defense is ready, Your
Mr. Simmons, you may call your next witness.
State would like to call Ms. Flozell Roberts, and she's a petitioner.
Ms. Roberts, would you please come forward? Ms. Roberts, yeah, you stand. Would you please raise your right hand. Ms. Roberts, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Roberts, you may put your hand down. You can take the witness stand. Simmons, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could you state your name for the record, please?
Flagell Roberts.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm the Director of Public Works for the city of Port Arthur.
And how long have you been there?
With the city, I've been here about 5 years.
Could you briefly describe your job title, responsibilities, and duties to the jury?
Sure, as the Director of Public Works, I manage and oversee the operations for street repairs, drainage facilities, traffic and electrical, facilities maintenance, our landfill, and our solid waste operations.
Are you familiar with 8900 block of Sassine Avenue in Port Arthur, Texas?
I am.
And is that in Jefferson County?
It is.
Do you know if the road is constructed of asphalt or concrete?
It is constructed of asphalt.
And can you tell the jury what your undergraduate major is in?
Civil engineering,
And where did you attend school?
Southern University and A&M College in Memphis.
Are there any other degrees you've obtained?
I have.
Could you list those for me?
I also have a Master of Engineering degree in Water Resources and Environmental Engineering, also from Southern University and A&M College. And I have a Master of Business Administration from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee. And I've also received additional training from the University of Houston main campus and from Harvard University.
Does civil engineering discipline encompass roadway designs?
It does.
And is there any other educational achievements you have obtained?
I'm sure, yeah, there are.
Quite a bit. And have you, as the Public Works Director, had the occasion to require maintenance out on Sassine Avenue?
For our signage, yes.
Do you know when that maintenance might have been performed?
On the roadway.
Yes, ma'am.
If I remember correctly, it was under the previous Public Works Director.
At that time, was there any damage to the roadway edge?
My understanding was that there was.
What about the roadway bed?
I'm not sure.
Is there a city of Port Arthur ordinance that governs heavy vehicle operation over roads and streets?
There is,
Is that ordinance 106-8?
yes.
And
That's
what,
one of the sections.
it is one of the sections, would 106-7 be the other?
Yes.
And what does that ordinance require of you?
It requires me to review road use permit applications in conjunction with the police chief or his designee.
Did you ever authorize a permit to the company owned that Mr. Mathis had worked for that you know of?
And the company is?
Any company, was there any company that had a roadway permit at this time?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Was there an active permit on March 30th, 2023 in particular?
No, ma'am.
Okay. To your knowledge, did Broderick Mathis ever apply for a roadway permit to use Sassine Avenue?
No, ma'am.
So it's safe to say there was no use agreement?
Between the city and Mr. Mathis, is that what?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
And Mr. Mathis had provided no bond that would be in effect on March 30th?
I'm sorry, slow down, but what
No,
did you
you're fine. Mr. Mathis had provided no bond that would have been in effect on March
No.
30th, 2023? Okay, did he ever provide a video of the road prior to usage?
No,
Is that something that's required?
yes, ma'am.
And that's required to obtain the permit, is that correct?
Yes,
To your knowledge, did Bryant Oilfield Resources ever apply for a roadway permit to use Sassine Avenue?
no,
So likewise, there's no road use agreement between Bryant Oilfield Services and the city of Port Arthur.
that is correct,
So it would be safe to say they had to not provided a bond.
correct.
Did, to your knowledge, the director of, to your knowledge, and while you have been director of public works, did Kirk Thomas ever apply for a roadway permit to use Sassine?
He did,
Okay, can you tell me what day he had submitted an application
March 30th.
and
About.
on or about? Okay, was that a complete application?
Not initially,
Do you know what was missing?
not off the top of my head, not completely off the top of my head. Remember there were a number of items that were missing. There were issues with the trucks because as part of our application, the applicant has to list all of the trucks that they plan to use, in addition to dimensions, weights, license plates. So I know there were some issues surrounding that. We also require a traffic plan, traffic control plan. If I remember correctly, he didn't, but I may be a little hazy on that.
Okay, so the list of trucks to be used, would that encompass the employees that were driving?
We don't require the names.
Just the actual truck?
Yes.
The designation of the truck? Okay, how many applications had Mr. Thomas sent in?
At that point,
Just in
In
general,
general?
over time?
maybe 2 since I've been employed with the city.
Were any of them ever?
And I'm saying maybe 2 because the other may have been directly by him or maybe by another entity for his property.
Were any of them ever approved?
Yes,
Do you know what day they were approved?
that I don't remember.
Were they approved on March 30th, 2023?
Prior to,
They were approved prior to March 30th, 2023?
I think so.
And Mr. Mathis had received his citation on March 30th, 2023.
But his company had not received it.
They had not received a permit. Okay. Let's see. So it's safe to say, once again, there was no road use agreement ever between the city of Port Arthur and Mr. Kirk Thomas.
Correct,
So he had never provided any bond,
correct,
and there was never a signed an agreement for the roadway.
correct.
Okay. Did Mr. Thomas ever document the actual road prior to obtaining the application for the permit?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is it fair to say that no person had actually had a permit on March 30th, 2023?
No person, no person.
No entity, no company,
Possibly an entity,
but none, I'm sorry. go
but
ahead.
I don't recall, I'm trying to recall when that entity ceased operations.
But Mr. Mathis was not one of those that was active.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
And I'm just going to finish my question just for purposes of record. He was one of those that actually did not obtain a permit for purposes of using the road on March 30th.
That is correct.
Okay. And are you familiar with Sassine Avenue personally?
I am.
Have you been out there?
I have.
Permission to approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may approach.
I'm going to show you what's been labeled as State's Exhibit 1. Are you familiar with this location?
I am.
Okay. And does this fairly and accurately depict that location?
It does.
Can you tell me where this location is?
That would be considered, I'd say the northwest side of the intersection of Sassy Avenue and 360, this is 365, and this is Sassy Avenue.
Okay, and just for purposes for the jury, can you show what you see on this picture?
Can I show?
Or can you describe? I apologize.
Oh, okay. So what I'm seeing here is the, like I said, the northwest corner of the intersection of Sassine Avenue and Highway 365. I see the rear of the stop sign at the intersection. I see a no truck sign, and pipeline markers.
Are you familiar with how long that sign has been there?
I know it's been there for a number of years. I'd say at least 2.5.
Is it safe to assume that anyone driving this road would pass by this?
Yes, everyone who passes there on that street.
And can you explain why the city requires permits before using roadways or no truck routes? I apologize.
Yes, because typically, streets such as this one, which is considered a residential, street, does not have the composition that a street, truck route would have. So, this street here, has very basic, I'll say very basic, materials used, for the composition of the street. And so therefore, the weight of the trucks traversing the street would deform the materials, and deform the street and cause damage.
And these particular materials that would actually be subject to this type of damage, would asphalt be included in that?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Scott, the witness is yours.
Good afternoon, Ms. Mizell. I'm
Good
Roberts.
afternoon.
Who is the proper party to apply for the permit in this situation?
Can you explain to me who exactly Mr. Mathis is?
He is a truck driver
Okay,
that was ticketed for driving on a no truck route.
okay.
So should he have applied for the permit?
He could have, I don't know if you're saying that because he
I'm
an
asking you.
independent contractor, I don't know. I never heard of this gentleman until here recently.
Can I move the boots? Here they are. If you will look at Defense Exhibit 1, it's a copy of Fort Lauderdale City Ordinance 106-8. You're familiar with that, aren't you?
I am.
So this requires, someone to post a bond and make an agreement with the city before bringing commercial vehicles down a street designated as a no truck route, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
which line exactly are you asking about?
I'm not right now.
Okay.
So if Mr. Mathis is gonna work as a truck driver, driving a commercial vehicle hauling drilling mud to Kurt Thomas's property at the end of Sassine Avenue, that abuts Sassine Avenue, who is the correct party to apply for the permit? Is it Helms? Is it Mr. Thomas? Is it the trucking company? Is it the pipeline company that is sending the mud? You are the person that approves the permit, right?
Correct.
Okay, who needs to get the permit?
So as you are aware, if you're looking at section 106-8, use of certain designated roadways.
Objection non-responsive, Your Honor. I just want you to tell
Objection
me,
sustained.
is it Mr. Mathis? Is it his boss? Or is it Mr. Thomas? Which one of those people, or is it the pipeline company? Who do you think is the correct party to carry the permit?
To carry the
To
permit?
apply for the permit? Because it's not even
So-
called a permit in this ordinance, it's called an agreement, but it says you need to put it in the application, which is some
Would you like for
paperwork.
me to answer the question?
I would very much like you to answer the question.
So it says here, no person shall operate construction equipment and vehicles. So those who are operating the construction equipment and vehicles would be responsible for applying for this application.
Okay, that's a very good point. So this is, no person shall operate construction equipment. This was not, okay, if this was not construction equipment, is a permit required?
I have witnessed those types of vehicles traversing down.
Objection non-responsive, Your Honor.
Objection
And
sustained.
I'm sorry, you're just not allowed to give like
Like,
a.
Ms. What was that?
Yes, sir.
When the court sustains an objection, that means that you should not go any further.
Okay.
You will allow counsel an opportunity to ask another question or rephrase the question.
Okay.
Okay,
Ideally-
you may proceed.
Ideally, you can do yes or no, or to the best of your ability, the narrative is not allowed. Does this ordinance apply to construction equipment and construction companies? Yes or no?
It does.
Okay. In fact, it's entitled use of certain designated roadways by construction companies, correct?
Yeah.
And so it says no person shall operate construction equipment and vehicles without furnishing a bond, making an agreement with the city. And if you look about midway through, doesn't it also say that contractors desiring to operate construction equipment and heavy trucks? So if you're not a contractor or you're not desiring to operate construction equipment, it doesn't appear that this would apply to someone who's not a contractor trying to operate construction equipment. Do you think it does?
I think it does.
Okay. Do you think it's confusing?
I don't.
Okay. And down a little further, it says specifying the particular area. Well, let's see, it says shall first make application, that's the application we're talking about. Make application with the Director of Public Works, that's you, specifying the particular area of construction and the time necessary to complete that work. So if you're not doing construction, how would you look this up on the city website and think that it applied to you? Do you think someone would read this who's not in the business of construction and think it applied to them?
Do you want me to answer the first or the second question?
Do you think someone who is not in the business of construction thinks that this section is for their business?
I can't tell you what anyone else would think.
Objection not responsive.
Objection sustained.
So is it your testimony that Mr. Mathis needed a permit?
Yes, ma'am.
So he should have made an application to the city.
He could have made an application.
He could have, or he should have.
If he wanted to operate, he should have.
Okay, so Kurt Thomas didn't need a permit then.
What was he doing?
Well, okay, if he's hauling drilling mud, Mr.
Kurt
Mathis,
Thomas was also hauling drilling?
no ma'am, if Mr. Mathis is driving a commercial vehicle filled with drilling mud
Mhm.
to be disposed of at Kurt Thomas's property,
Mhm.
where he runs a land farming operation and has a permit from the Railroad Commission to dispose of drilling mud,
Mhm.
the pipeline company either uses their own trucks or hires Brant Oilfield Trucking, who gets a truck driver, Mr. Mathis. The pipeline company ships the oil out, a truck driver drives it over to a land farm, in this case, Mr. Thomas's, unloads it. I'm trying to figure out which one of them are required to carry the permit you think they need.
So the driver of the vehicle, who in this case would be Mr. Mathis, is required to carry the permit in the vehicle.
Which one of them is required to apply for the permit?
Any of them can actually apply.
So they don't all
And
need
my
one,
understanding is that.
as
Mr.
long as
Thomas-
somebody have one? I'm sorry? Well, let's talk about that, because you just testified, or you just said to Ms. Simmons that Mr. Thomas had never provided a bond, and in fact, he has put up a bond before, hasn't he?
When?
In 2021 or 22, I mean, is it your testimony that Mr. Thomas has he had a permit in the past?
Not regarding this permit application, he did not.
Okay, not this one, but he has had a permit, you said he had never had a permit, or he had never put up a bond, and he has, hasn't he?
I don't recall at this point, but I was only talking about this one permit application.
Well, she asked you and you said he has in fact had a permit before. I mean, you just testified to that, so he would have had to have been bond, or he wouldn't have given him one. Correct?
Potentially,
Okay, well, you
but I'm
said he,
only speaking about this one permit application.
okay, I'm just talking about your testimony just prior with Ms. Simmons, when she asked you if he had ever had a permit. or ever applied for a permit or ever put up a bond. Now, you said he had a permit in the past and he had not put up a bond. That's not accurate. You would not have given him an agreement with a bond, right?
I said that he did not pay a bond.
Maybe I misunderstood. Is it your testimony that has he ever put up a bond?
I really actually don't recall this one.
Okay, because that would go through you, correct? You're the person that approves these.
The application,
Okay,
I do
But
not.
the application's
Wait,
in-
hold on. I do not ensure that the bond is paid at that point. No. I provide
objection,
the
non-responsive,
information.
Your Honor.
I provide the information.
Objection,
to our
non-responsive.
legal counsel,
Okay, Ms. Roberts,
and they-
Ms. Roberts. Okay, I'm sustaining the objection. Okay, you may ask your next question.
Once you approve an application for what we're calling a permit or an agreement with the city, it also has to be approved by the Port Arthur City Council, correct?
That is correct.
And who requires that it be approved by the city council? Is that something the city council requires, something that you just require as part of the process?
I can't dictate what council does, but it is a part of our ordinance that they, approve.
Well, it doesn't say that in this ordinance, is that is that in another ordinance that the city council has to approve the applications for these permits?
I really don't recall what that is.
But you think there's an ordinance that says that?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay, and that takes time, right? I mean, the council meets like how often?
Every other week.
Okay, so would you say that the approval process for trying to get a permit can be lengthy?
Not if the applicant has submitted, all information, that's fine.
But it can take a couple of weeks at least, especially if you're having to wait for the council to meet.
Potentially.
Are you familiar with, Port Arthur City Ordinance 10641?
And the title is?
Powers and duties of the Department of Public Works.
Yes.
If you want to look at it. Handing you with the Martha's Defense Exhibit 2. At the bottom of that page, under section B, at number 13. Would you agree with me that this is somewhat of a limitation on the power of this is entitled Power and Duties of the Department of Public Works, correct?
That is correct.
And so would you agree that number 13 is somewhat of a limitation on those powers? Number,
I'm ready. Okay. Can you repeat your question, please?
do you believe that number 13 is a limitation on the powers of the Department of Public Works?
I don't understand what you're asking.
Well, it says, let's see. The Department of Public Works is authorized in conjunction with the Chief of Police to designate the routes along the streets of the city, which must be followed by commercial vehicles engaged in steady hauling of material of any kind, or which are carrying unusually long or heavy loads. And it goes on to say, no such vehicle shall be prohibited from using any street for the purpose of going directly to or from any residential, commercial, or industrial establishment abutting on such street for purposes of routine commerce, provided they enter the street at the closest intersection to their destination and proceed no farther than the next intersection in order to return. So would you agree when those circumstances are present, the vehicle can use the street? Under these circumstances written in number 13, where it says no such vehicle shall be prohibited from using any street. When these circumstances are present, this is an exception applies, correct?
Provided that the police chief, yes, provided.
Okay, and that's between you and the chief of police. Okay, and this section does not account for the composition of the street. It doesn't say unless the road's asphalt. Or unless this, or unless that. It could have or should have, but would you agree with me? It is just an exception where if these things are here, no vehicle can be prohibited from using the street. Would you agree with me about that?
Not completely.
You don't agree that when the terms set out in number 13 are present, that no such vehicle can use that street? You don't agree with this ordinance? I'm sorry, no such vehicle can be prohibited from using the street. Do you disagree with this?
I do not disagree with city's ordinances.
Okay. So then you agree when those circumstances are present, the vehicle can use the street?
Only if I confer with the chief of police. And we decide collectively that it
Well, it actually doesn't say that. What it says is the director of public works in conjunction with the chief of police can designate the routes that must be followed by commercial vehicles. That is true. You and him can confer, right? And designate which routes are no truck routes. It then goes on to provide an exception. But I guess you are gonna disagree with me on that. Hathaway Avenue abuts Kirk Thomas's property, correct? It goes directly onto his property.
My understanding is that it does.
And you've been out there, correct? The last job he did, Kirk Thomas applied for a permit, didn't
I believe so. What date are you talking about?
he? No. I'm talking about since this ticket was written. He put in an application for a permit.
I believe he has.
And were you aware that that job ended before y'all could even get it approved or finalized or anything like that?
I don't know the intimate details.
Has any of the other residents on Sassine ever applied for a permit to use the street, commercial vehicle?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Do you have knowledge of the neighbors bringing commercial vehicles on Sassine Avenue without a permit?
Not previously, no.
If they are using Sassine Avenue for commercial vehicles and heavy trucks over 10,000 pounds, would they need a permit?
They are hauling materials back and forth. Yes, they would. Excuse me.
Well, section 106(8) is not about the materials. It's about the weight, correct? It applies to all trucks over 10,000 pounds, right?
You're going back in. Excuse me.
Need some water or?
Yes, please.
So if the neighbors were doing that, they would need to apply to post a bond and try to obtain some kind of agreement with the city, correct?
If they had. Excuse me, I'm sorry. If there was a similar operation, yes.
And you talked about, the road being asphalt or damage to the road. Is it possible if the neighbors are running commercial vehicles up and down that street, that could also cause problems to the road?
Thank you very much. The neighbors are doing what?
Running commercial vehicles up and down the street. Heavy trucks over 10,000 pounds.
Possible.
You said that, Mr. Thomas put in an application that was incomplete because it didn't list like the trucks or the dimensions, the weight, some of the information. What if that's information that he doesn't have? Because maybe he doesn't know what trucks the pipeline company is sending. He makes an agreement with the pipeline company, you can put your drilling mud on my property, send the trucks. and you're asking him for information he does not have. What do you do in that situation?
So in that situation, we would advise Mr. Thomas to speak with his vendor, contractor, whatever this company is, and to request that material. That information.
And are you familiar with how the sort of, I guess, the pipeline and oil and gas industry works when it comes to this land farming and disposal of this drilling mud?
No, really, I don't.
Have you ever had any knowledge that, you know, or that Mr. Thomas doesn't get a lot of notice when they're gonna come and when these, and that these jobs happen quickly?
No.
So did Mr. Thomas also need to apply for a permit for this? Or just Mr. Mathis?
Didn't we answer that question?
Objection non-responsive.
Objection sustained.
I was very confused. Did Mr. Thomas need to apply for a permit for Mr. Mathis to use the road?
Where was the confusion?
Did Mr. Thomas, was he the one that should have put in an application for Mr. Mathis, the truck driver, to be able to bring the commercial vehicle onto his property?
As I previously said, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Mathis, or Bryant, all could have applied.
Do you know what year these ordinances were written in?
Not off the top of my head.
If I told you it was 1961, would you have any reason to not believe that? I actually think it's on there on the paper.
I don't have a reason to not believe you.
I mean, these ordinances haven't been updated in like 60 years, have they?
Okay.
That's the way they show it.
Ms. Simmons?
Very briefly, you're responsible for the permit applications, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so you understand the entirety of the application process?
I do.
Okay, and you said a driver on the roadway, regardless of the employee or the actual company owner, would have to apply for a permit.
That is correct.
So
They
anyone
can
can-
apply.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone using the roadway would.
Yes, ma'am.
And they have the ability to apply.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Mr. Roderick Mathis have a permit on March 30th, 2023?
He did not.
Okay, and does the ordinance apply to all heavy equipment?
It does.
Is this including commercial vehicles, as Ms. Spot had said?
It does.
Okay, and during the waiting time, the approval process for one in which they actually apply for the permit, are they still allowed to use the roadway, or must they wait until approval?
They must wait.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions?
Okay. Ladies, witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Roberts, you may step down. Yes. Then you have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Ms. Simmons, you may call your next witness.
The state has no further questions, Your Honor, or further witnesses, I apologize.
Will the state rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Yes, I think I have a witnesses outside.
Okay.
We, Reagan Jody, you see these out there? Reagan Jody.
Brody? Mr. Brody, would you please come forward?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brody, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Brody, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
You may put your hand down, Mr. Brody. You may take a seat in the witness stand. Miss, you may proceed, Miss.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm like, state your name for the record.
My name's Reagan Drode.
What is your current occupation?
I am a DOT consultant.
What does that mean?
It means that, I assist trucking companies, stay compliant with the federal, state, and local regulations, in our nation.
And what qualifies you to do that?
I was a Texas state trooper for over 24 years, worked in the commercial motor vehicle industry, or enforcement program.
Do you have an extensive background with commercial vehicles?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I inspected commercial motor vehicles for over 20 years. I've inspected thousands of commercial motor vehicles. I was also an FTO, which is a field training officer for state troopers, for local, like cities, deputies, and some constables, training them also.
Are you familiar with Sassy Avenue?
I am, yes, ma'am.
Do you know Kurt Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he and ask you to come or hire you or call you or whatever to come out and look at the entrances to his property?
Yes, ma'am, he did.
I mean, for the purposes of commercial vehicle entry.
Yes, ma'am, he did.
And were you able to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Because is there another entrance into his property that's not off Sassy Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
And well, tell me what you did.
So I looked at both entrances. One of them is off of Westport off the road. It's, if you're familiar with the area, it's 365 and Westport off the road. Used to be an old crawdad gas station there. If you go north towards Beaumont, it's about 1.1 miles away from that intersection on the right-hand side towards Beaumont is the other entrance. I looked at that entrance as well.
Okay, and is there a bridge on that entrance?
Yes, ma'am.
A white bridge?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna refer to that as a white bridge. But, okay, are there problems with the white bridge with commercial vehicles going through the other entrance over the white bridge?
Yes, ma'am. It's very narrow.
And did you actually bring a commercial vehicle out there? Or I don't know, what did you do to try to see how it worked?
Yes, ma'am. We brought one of his trucks out there to make a turn. He was, if you're coming from Beaumont towards Port Arthur in that direction, so it would be southbound is what we would call that. And then he would make a left-hand turn onto his private driveway.
And in that entrance, not Sassy Avenue, but the white bridge entrance, does that bridge go over the LMBA? Does it go over pipeline easement?
Yes, ma'am.
And does it go over the Union Pacific Railroad?
Yes, ma'am.
And is there a steep incline to the railroad there?
Yes, ma'am.
And have all those things proved very problematic in him trying to use that entrance for commercial vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe, based on your training and experience, that it would be safe for him to use commercial vehicles and the other entrance?
Other entrance meaning Sassing?
No, the white bridge.
The white bridge. I think it would be unsafe.
When those big commercial vehicles try to make that turn, like you're talking about off Westport Arthur Road, his property sits right off of Westport Arthur Road, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So when they try to turn off Westport Arthur Road into the white bridge entrance, is the commercial vehicle taking up every lane of traffic?
Yes, ma'am. There's also a stop sign there as well.
To your knowledge, have the trucks gotten hung up on the railroad tracks?
He has told me they had an issue with the truck getting hung up on the railroad track.
And have you also sort of assessed the entrance on Sassy?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you believe that could be safe and more viable option for commercial?
I believe it's a more viable option.
Based on all your years and experience of working commercial vehicle enforcement, are you familiar with like the hauling of drilling mud?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that's done pretty routinely in our area
Yes, ma'am.
in Southeast Texas?
Yes, ma'am. I do.
Just based on your own experience? Is that something that's happening a lot here in Southeast Texas?
Yes, ma'am. I would have on quite a few occasions to stop trucks, stopping drilling, the vehicles they carry, I mean, and we kind of know which ones they are.
And is that probably because there's a lot of pipeline companies around here drilling for oil and
Yes.
laying pipelines and all those things?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you say the trucks hauling drilling mud are operating in routine commerce here in our area in Southeast Texas?
Yes, ma'am. I do.
And do you, again, you think the Sassy entrance is the safest way for commercial vehicles to enter the property?
Yes, ma'am.
I pass the witness.
Simmons,
On what date did you go out and view Sassy Avenue?
I've been up there several times.
Okay, do you have any idea or time frame of what those dates were?
I'm gonna say April of last year, then I wanna say less than a month ago,
Okay, and what about Westport Auto Road?
same.
Okay, regardless of difficulty getting to an actual roadway, you spoke of a bridge on Westport Auto, is that correct?
Yes, we've offered this for.
Okay, regardless of difficulty, would you say that all ordinance should still be followed?
I would say so.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No more questions, Your Honor.
may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Droy, you excused and you have a blessed day.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Scott, you can call your next witness.
Your Honor, that's called, Mr. Mathis.
Mathis, would you please come forward? Mathis, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Mathis, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Mathis, you may put your hand down, take a seat on the witness stand.
Okay, Mr. Mathis, state your full name and where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed with Solar Transportation.
Are you a truck driver?
Yes,
You have a CDL?
yes,
How long have you been a truck driver?
for 14 years.
Now, when you got this ticket on March 30th of 2023, where were you working then?
Brian Harfield.
And is
Resources.
that a trucking company?
Yes,
And are all their trucks uniform?
yes,
I mean, they all look the same.
exactly.
So even if there were other Bryant oil-filled trucks going up and down Sassine, does that mean you were driving all of them? Do you know if there were any other trucks of y'all working then?
On that job, that particular job in that area, it was four to five of us running that
Okay.
job.
So there were other Bryant oil-filled, trucks hauling drilling mud to Kirk Thomas's property that day.
There were that and on some RLs.
What's RL?
There was another company that was also contracted to work that area too.
Okay. Okay, and do you know there were other drilling companies hauling mud off other sites? Had you delivered out there to Mr. Thomas's property before?
Yes,
Well, tell me about this day. Did you speak to the chief of police?
yes,
Okay, did he follow you in?
yes, ma'am. When I came off of, I'm not sure what the name of the street is, but I'm not familiar with this area.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but real quick, you don't live here in Beaumont, do you?
No,
Okay, where do you live?
I live in Houston. I'm from Louisiana.
Okay, so you're not as familiar with these streets we're talking about. Okay, go ahead.
So I actually come off the highway I'm here in Sassoon. So Sassoon is where the interest is to actually get to Mr. Kirk Thomas's property. They had a truck parked on the side. It was a plain clothes truck. It was regular. So I didn't know it was parked closer to the side of where the man had her house with a horse.
So it was a regular vehicle,
It was a
parked on the side of the
regular
street.
truck.
Was it going to make it difficult for you to pass?
I actually had to, get on the other side of the road to
Okay,
pass by. So once I actually passed by her and made it to about the foot of the property where it did end at, that's when I realized the truck was following behind me. So as I go through the property, they have the lights in front of the truck. He turned those on. So we
like
got,
his red and blue lights?
yeah, it was
Okay.
like inside of the grills though, so it wasn't, you wouldn't even know that they were on. So once I got to, cause I had to stop at the entrance, maybe right before the entrance of the property. Once you're inside of the property itself, it's a long little road, and then you get.
Let me interrupt you and ask you this. So Sassine Avenue dead ends into Kirk Thomas's,
You go straight,
abuts the street directly.
Straight to the exit.
Okay, and then once you get inside, is there an actual like concrete drop?
No,
Okay. maybe not then, I don't know, okay,
At
but
that time.
there's a road,
Yeah, it was,
Okay.
paved, it was dirty, it was a dirt road that's actually paved, I'm thinking they was finna set it up for it to be concrete,
okay.
because that's the way it had set.
So chief follows you in, and then what happens?
I get to the mailbox, and that's when, I realized that he had the lights on, so I got to the mailbox, that's why I leave the tickets in.
Wait, well, when you say ticket, what are you talking about?
But it's the ticket that you have to let them know that you actually came in and did a dump the load. So
Okay.
he has a count of how many times or what trucks have came and dumped the load.
Is the ticket paperwork you're required to leave there
Yes.
for that job? Okay,
So once I stopped and got out, he was like, "Hey man," I was like, "What's going on?" Because he was playing coast. I still didn't realize who he was. And he said, "Oh," he said, "I'm the chief of police." I said, "Oh, okay, how you doing?" You know, so like, he's like, "Oh, yeah, man." He said, "Man, you see that sign right there?" And I said, "Yeah, I seen it." I said, "But you know, this is the only route that we had to come in. Plus, it's supposed to be known as they have a permit for this route." So, he was
and
like,
what did he write you a ticket?
"No."
What did he tell you to do?
He told me he talked with me a little bit longer. He said, "Man, he said, I'm about to start writing tickets because we having a problem on here with this." And he said, "I'm not gonna write you no ticket here today, you know, because I know this your job and you're just trying to make a living." I said, "Yeah, I don't have no knowledge of it. As far as I know, that they have a permit." I said, "I just talked to the guy who had it."
Okay, well, let me slow you down, were the other officers out there at that point, the ones that wrote you the ticket?
No, not that I know of, because we were farther back where you can't see the street. So when we were there, we couldn't see it.
So did you go in and unload the mud?
Yes.
Okay, and was Kurt Thomas the property owner there?
Yeah, by the time when I was almost finished with the conversation with the chief, and he was talking to me and asking me about the permit, and I told him, I said, "That's the guy you should be talking to right there." I said, "He told me everything he could," so I pointed him in his direction he went to.
Have you ever known, or believed as a truck driver that you needed a permit to drive like you specifically needed to carry a permit to drive a commercial vehicle on a no truck route?
No, that's not what you have a permit as a driver for.
Are there permits and things you are required to carry as a
When-
driver?
As a driver, yes, you will have permits for certain situations. If I'm carrying an overload road, oversized, carrying weight or overweight, either one of those or either, hazardous chemical. Those are permits that I have to have on me as a person.
But you've never had to carry a permit for a road?
No.
A road use permit? And
Because the company gets those.
do you just go where your boss tells you to?
That's exactly what we do.
Did you believe that you were okay to leave after your conversation with the chief?
Yes.
Did you believe you were gonna receive a ticket?
No.
Did you believe it was okay for y'all to finish the job? You said you've been driving to 14 years?
Yes.
And based on your, knowledge of the truck driving industry, is the hauling of the drilling mud, is that a pretty frequent routine thing in this area?
Yes, in Texas, in Southeast Texas, all four Texas, this is a big thing.
And is that just because of all the pipelines around here that
Yes.
are being laid and stuff? Do you have any knowledge about the actual drilling mud?
I know it doesn't require to have, it's not hazardous, it's just mud. You know?
But it's got to be moved out when they drill.
Yes,
They can't leave it. It's
and the
got to
reason
go.
that it has to be moved in certain times in increments, because once they drill, sometimes it's real slow and they have to shoot water into it. And then once all of a sudden, when they're pulling the line through, it will impede the boat, so they have to get it out there as fast as possible. So that means that the mud has to keep being moved from out that position to another spot.
If you're not the proper party to apply for, an agreement and post a bond and make an agreement with the city, do you think you're the proper party to be punished?
It's going where I was supposed to go. I mean, that's what I was hired to do, drive the mud to the next spot.
What happens to your CDL when you get a ticket?
It's called, CSA score points, and, when you get a ticket, it depends on which type of ticket it is. It puts points on your CDL, and, when you get so many, it makes it hard for another company to even want to hire you or be able to hire you because of the insurance.
And can that affect your ability to work?
Yeah.
Oh, I noticed on the video, you kind of didn't seem to want to get out of your truck. What was that about?
Well, when you get pulled over, and I've been pulled over for different infractions. When you're dealing with CDL, if only time you have to get out of the CDL, out of your truck, when they pull you over is when they're doing the inspection. If they're gonna do an inspection, if you're just gonna get a ticket, he's just gonna ask you for your information and give you your ticket.
Have you worked more in Louisiana?
Yeah, I worked in Louisiana, I've worked all over though, because I've been over in 48, all 48.
And in your experience, do you often, if they want to pull you over and check something, do you often not have to get out of the vehicle?
No, if they pulling you over, unless they're saying, we're gonna do an inspection on your truck, that's the only time they action, then they're gonna ask you to actually help them with it, so you're gonna stay in there first off, when the inspection starts.
And are you missing work to be here today?
Yes,
Have you been down a no truck route before?
yes,
Have you ever been stopped or ticketed or
I've been stopped, but I've never been ticketed.
if that's the only way to get to your destination, what is your belief about that as a truck?
And that's the reason I've never been ticketed, because, and if you're going down the truck, a no truck route, and it's your only direction to get to your delivery point, you have the opportunity to go down that route and come down and deliver and come back the same way that you went. So
You
that was the
believe-
reason why once he seen where I was delivering at, he looked at it and seen it, and then he said, okay, you can go. That was the reason why I was never ticketed for it.
In the past, in other
Yes.
circumstances, you mean?
Mhm.
So in all of your training experience and as a truck driver, if it's the only way in, you can do it.
Yes, you're supposed to take the straightest and the closest route to your actual delivery area when it's a no truck route. And
Pass the witness.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Mathis.
Hey.
I'm gonna approach real quick. I'm gonna hand you state's exhibit number 1, okay? Can you take a look at that for me? I just have a couple questions for you. You said you're originally from Louisiana, is that correct? I'm sorry, I was wrong. Okay. So you're not familiar with Texas streets? Is that what you testified to?
I'm not familiar with the names of them.
Okay. Have you been on this road several times?
Yes, ma'am.
So you would say you are familiar with Sassine Avenue?
Yes, ma'am, for like being on the road itself, but
Can you tell me what you see in that picture there?
the back of a stop sign, a no truck sign.
So on the several occasions you had actually driven down Sassine Avenue, you were actually made aware by passing this no truck sign that
Yes,
you
ma'am.
weren't to be driving on this route. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you've seen the sign.
Yes, ma'am.
So at the time that you said, and you testified just briefly with Scott, the chief of police, Mr. DeRosa, had stopped you at one point.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and he actually, according to your testimony, made you aware that you were not supposed to be driving down the road.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is it your testimony that you would at some point need a permit on certain occasions?
No, I'm not. Well, it depends on
Right, prior you had testified that there were certain occasions that would require you to have a permit.
Yes, ma'am. Me as a person.
Okay,
yes.
can you list some of those for me again?
Hazardous material, overweight, oversized. Those will be my reasons for having a permit on me.
Okay, let's see, and why is it in the body cam footage that we reviewed earlier that you had actually made a statement to the officers that you thought you had a permit?
Not me. I thought the company had a permit. That's what I told them.
So were you under the impression that a permit was needed just to drive down this road?
Well, that's what they kept saying. And that's what we're being told. So I went back to my boss and told them the same thing because I haven't been stopped there 3 or 4 times.
So you believed you needed a permit to drive this road?
No, I didn't believe that I needed a permit. They said that's what needed to be going on there. I have never needed a permit to go into a spot where it's the only interest for you to go safely back and forth though. If you have to go.
But on this particular occasion, on this stop, you had passed the no truck route.
Yeah,
And
and
you had been informed by the chief of police himself that you were not to be on this road.
that he would start ticketing
And
if
you,
they didn't have a
so he gave you the courtesy of a warning, is that correct?
yes.
So you still maintained, or drove that road several times there?
Yes, because when he finished talking to the actual landowner, I was under the impression that everything was.
So you had assumed, is that correct? Would that be safe to
Yeah,
say?
that's when I came back out here.
And as a professional driver, are you held to a higher standard having a CDL?
Yes,
Okay, so you would agree that there's a higher responsibility for you on the road?
yes, ma'am.
So according to your testimony, not on this particular occasion, but you had actually been stopped prior for driving down no truck routes.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have then received the benefit of a warning. for
No,
driving
ma'am,
no
it's
truck
not a
route.
warning then, because once you show them.
Well, at the
that you
time
have-
of this previous stop, you said you had been given a verbal warning that, or the officer discretion.
You talking about on Sassone?
No, you had said you had been stopped previously for driving on.
No, it's not, you can't get a ticket for it, ma'am. That's why I was
According to
telling
your
you.
testimony, you had been stopped prior
Prior
for
to that,
driving off a no truck route.
Yes,
And officer discretion, he gave you a verbal
No.
warning,
it's not out of the discretion. He was gonna give me a ticket had I not had a.
and he
deli-
decided not to.
On it, no, ma'am. you
No,
can't
I
give me a
just
ticket.
asked if he's allowed to answer, finish his answer.
Okay, objection sustained.
He cannot give me a ticket if I'm going to a delivery route. That's why he said, okay, you're free to pass. Other than that, he would have gave me a ticket. If I'm going through this route just to get to a quicker area, or cutting through that town just to get through there, and I'm not on that route, and I'm not delivering there, you getting a ticket. But other than that, he cannot give me a ticket because there's no other way for me to deliver that
You
product.
answered
to
the
them.
question, so I'm gonna proceed to the next one at this point, okay? But in this particular moment you're talking about, are you referring to he is in the chief of police, or he is in the prior warning you had received?
When you talk about prior, so I'm talking about prior.
That's what I'm trying to confirm, just for the record, so we can make sure we're on the same page.
Uh,
So you're referring to the officer of the prior
Yes, ma'am.
incident. So the chief of police himself had told you not to be on that road, Sassine Avenue.
Those are not the specific words that he used, but you can take that as that.
But he told you were not to be on that route.
He told me that
Yes or no?
if they don't have a.
Yes or
permit,
no? Did he tell you to be on that route? Or he could be?
Yeah.
He
No,
said
ma'am,
you
know,
could be.
You can be.
So just to confirm, you were, at the time of this incident, you were on Sassine Avenue in Jefferson County, Texas, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When that was on March 30th that you had been initially stopped? And you were made aware at that time you were not to be on that route? And you were operating the motor vehicle in question?
Yes.
Okay, and it exceeded the 10,000 pounds gross weight?
Yes.
Okay, and it was on a designated no truck route? Okay, and you did not have a permit with the city?
No.
Okay, state has no further question, Your Honor.
And Mr. Mathis, you said that the chief followed you in, and it was your belief that you were gonna find to leave. I mean, obviously you were gonna have to leave, couldn't leave your truck there. So once you went in, you had to go back out, and that's the only way, right? But was it your belief that you were okay to finish the job, and that he talked to the property owner, and that everything was okay?
Yes, ma'am, because that's what he asked me, and I told him that will be a guy to speak to about the permit.
And in reference to the prior incident of you getting stopped on a no truck route, you didn't actually receive a warning, right? Because is it your testimony that once you're able to show them, I'm delivering here, and this is the only way in, they won't write you a ticket?
At all.
Okay, I pass witness.
Ms. Simmons?
You had heard earlier that officer, I believe it was Levine, testified that's officer discretion when writing a citation, correct?
Yes.
So you would agree that would apply in this instance? This particular stop we're here for today,
Was that
officer
so?
discretion,
Was that something?
correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, what's that? Okay, Mr. Mathis, you may step down. Ms. Scott, you have any other witnesses for the day?
Not today, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of jury, this will conclude the testimony for the day. Tomorrow, courthouse is closed because of the holiday of Juneteenth. And so we'll start back on Thursday at 1 o'clock. We're gonna be here at 1 o'clock on Thursday. Okay, so at this time, everyone, please stand as the jury. We'll be in recess until 1 o'clock on Thursday for the trial. Our jail run will start at 9 a.m. on Thursday.
We're gonna start at 9.
Yes,
Okay.
that's when we're gonna start at 9.
Thank you.